have the coolest name of all the speakers over the next 2 days. That's Mr. Johnston, who is an engineering teacher at Russellville High. He is one of Project Lead the Way's premier teachers. And from things, I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say because it sounds like he's doing some great things out there. So Jazz, with no further ado, welcome to the stage, and thank you.
Thank you so much. Are both of these on right here? I didn't prepare a PowerPoint because it's summer and I'm a teacher, so I just have some notes that I'm gonna speak from. So I'd like to thank Mr. Owen for having me down, and thank Project Lead the Way for making this possible. First of all, I want to tell you something right up front, is that I'm a fraud, okay? Is that I didn't get into education, or more specifically STEM education, because I'm really, really excited about it. I got into education to make a difference, and hopefully to throw a few more pebbles in that pond that Bobby Kennedy talked about. I know most of my students won't remember Ohm's law or how to find the ideal mechanical advantage of a pulley, but after spending 15 years working in industry and noticing a large lack of people that lack the basic skills that I was looking for, I decided to become a teacher. I got into the teaching business because I wanted to teach grit and problem solving and critical thinking. And STEM education, I just realized, was the coolest way to do that. After all, we have the robots and the dry ice and the Tesla coils. I don't think they have that over in English. I love my job. My dad had recently told my superintendent that he didn't have to pay me, that he was convinced that I would do it for free, and I think my dad's probably right. However, my wife might have something to say about that. I teach at Russellville High School, and every day I get a firsthand view of how STEM education is going to improve our planet. When I tell people I'm a teacher, they always ask, hey, what subject do you teach? And I say engineering, and normally they say, wow, I wish that they would have had that when I was in school. And I certainly agree. I'm very passionate about what I do and how I do it. I want to tell you a little bit about my story. My dad is an engineer, and he ran his own company. And so the natural path for my life should have been something like this: graduate high school, go to college, major in mechanical engineering, because he'll tell you that's the best, and work for my dad, and then take over his company, and then world domination. Just kidding about the world domination part. But I had a couple of things standing in my way to do that. The number one thing was my belief that I was capable of doing that. And probably a lot of the grit necessary to complete it. I always struggled in a traditional classroom. Learning was never a top priority. What I did learn in school was that I wasn't good at school. I wasn't good enough to become an engineer. And I believe strongly that had I been in a classroom like the one that I get to teach in, that I might just have learned to been able to push beyond my limits and perceive and reach the goals. Even having a father that was an engineer, I'm not sure I fully understood what engineering was. So if you're not, and I know I'm preaching a little bit to the choir here, but it's the use of math and science to solve real world problems. So having said that, you can understand why Vanilla Ice is our patron saint. Because if you've got a problem, he'll solve it. Thank you. This year, STEM fields are expected to grow at a rate nearly double those in other fields. An estimated 1.2 million STEM jobs are going to go unfilled because the workforce does not possess the people to fill it. This is facts, and many of the jobs that our children are going to have, they don't even exist yet. So how do we provide an education that teaches grit and problem solving and critical thinking? I think STEM education, when done right, allows students to understand why they are learning it and lets them know how they can use the knowledge they have gained in the real world. I'm specifically going to talk to you today about something called the Activities Project Problem Approach to Learning. It is student-centered and allows them to really buy into learning. I seldom have students ask me, teachers, two favorite questions. When do we need to learn? Why do we need to learn this? And when am I ever going to use this? Every year I get fresh-eyed sophomores brand new to the high school, and being an engineering teacher, I normally get students that have done very well in a traditional classroom. They come in very prepared to absorb the material I provide as the sage on the stage, and then regurgitate that information, and then move on to the next task. In my class, and many like it, the rote memorization of facts is not the pinnacle of learning, but the foundation. Being able to take what you have learned and use it to create a better world is the halcyon we should reach for. In Project Lead the Way classes, we utilize the activity, project, problem instructional approach. The APB instructional approach has given me a tool to teach with that feels custom made. I could not teach in a traditional classroom. I often wonder if the APB approach was applied to other classrooms outside of STEM, if the alarming stat that most teachers don't teach over 5 years would change. In my experience in a traditional classroom, that a student's learning is often limited by the knowledge of the instructor. I can assure you that in an APB classroom, the teacher's knowledge is not a limiting factor of the student's knowledge. I love being constantly amazed by what my students learn on their own. But before I get too far ahead, I want to talk to you about specifically what APB is. The A stands for activities, and in the activities phase, we use step-by-step processes designed to teach concept and skills. They do this by creating a scaffolding approach which allows the learner to build on his or her prior knowledge and skills. The activities provide numerous ways to provide feedback and for the teacher to give formative assessments. This feedback can often be done in real time, which numerous studies have shown the power of providing feedback very quickly, how effective that is. The P in the APB stands for projects. They allow the learner to use the knowledge and skills acquired in the activities to solve a problem. Often this problem has a known solution or goal for the learner to accomplish. But during the project phase, one can use questioning techniques with the students as a powerful way to assess and then close any gaps in knowledge or skills the learner has. We all understand the importance of differentiation in our classroom. The project allows for differentiation. Students at a lower skill and knowledge level can still solve the specified problem, while students with more knowledge can solve it in a different way, showcasing their own skill set and understandings. That's a very high ceiling. The B in APB stands for problem. And I know problem doesn't start with a B, but it has a B in it. And this phase of the APB instruction can start with a prompt or can be identified to the learner. No specific solution is given. This enables the student to use his or her knowledge and skills to create and achieve at a level that is beyond what they've done in the past. This phase also encourages and often requires student-centered learning of knowledge and skills that were not implicitly taught during the activity or the project phase. Students are required to reflect on their learning. This provides a valuable assessment to them and to the instructor. One of the great things about the APB instructional approach is that it allows me to not average my kids. I want you to think about a regular classroom. And let's say that I have a kid that goes on and I teach a lesson and I give them some practice problems and they make a C on it. And then they come down to the quiz and they make maybe a high C. And then I give them a test and they get a B. And then at the end of the 9 weeks, I give them a 9 weeks test, but they make an A on it. Well, what's their grade going to be? A low B or maybe a high C? But my question is, if they've proven that they have mastered that content, why are we averaging our kids? When we average our kids, oftentimes the grade becomes the student goal and not the knowledge. I had a student this year in class, and we'll call her Carolina. And Carolina was tasked to build a robot that had to move an obstacle course throughout my lab. And now this child was in the robotics team, but she was a builder. She had never coded before. She thought she couldn't code. And so she works really hard on this project, and at first she fails, and she's going through the process, and she's an A type student, and she's there after school working. I even had kids up on Saturday working in the lab, and she comes into and she's crying, tears running down, because she doesn't think she's going to get an A because her robot's not going to be able to complete the obstacle course. And I said, Carolina, what have you learned? And so she starts talking to me about all the different things she's learned with coding, about if-else statements, or she's actually using switch statements and some pretty advanced coding stuff that, beginning she was just a builder. She had never coded anything. And so I realized real quick that she had advanced knowledge of what I wanted her to accomplish. And I just looked at her and I said, well, if you're worried about making an A, you've got one. And she looked dumbfounded at me and she said, you can't do that. And I said, I just did. Now I want you to go back and focus on finishing your task and focus on learning more about coding and not worrying about the grade. And that was a really powerful moment for me, because it allowed me to realize so often in school those kids are just on that grade. And I really think that in this method, when we go away with the APB approach, that we can assess kids based on, are they proficient, or basic or advanced, and we can really get an idea of not where they start, but where they end, and then give them a grade on that, and not average our kids. The APB approach, lastly, I want to say, really helps the kids push beyond the limits of what they thought they could achieve. Sometimes in my classroom, there's the brightest smile of success. I've seen it 100 times, and I'm addicted to it. And then sometimes the lesson at the end is just perseverance, and that's a powerful lesson for kids at all. And I want to leave you today with a quote by one of my favorite Arkansans, Dr. Maya Angelou, and she said, "When we know better, we do better." And I think that this is a powerful way to teach people how to do better. So thank you.